about Module 9, which is Assistive Technologies. And the role of assistive technologies is to help students with disabilities be able to learn and be in a school setting and environment that is adequate and adaptable to their needs. So you may have a student who has a visual disability. You're going to need aids to help them, or an audio disability where they can't hear as well. But this could be things that are as simple as a writing disability all the way to a very physical disability where they maybe are wheelchair bound. But my experiences with these assistive technologies is very minimal. When I grew up and going to college and stuff, I didn't know about these. I mean, obviously, I knew that there were some students who had different colored plastic sheets that they put over their papers, but I really didn't know what those were for. After doing research for this assignment, I found that was a reading disability, and those were a reading or a visual aid. So I've had experience with that. Smart boards, those are something I've had a lot of experience with, though they weren't necessarily just a visual or audio disability aid. They were just a aid that the school was using because they knew they had different forms of learners. And so talking about those smart boards, that is the technology, I would put them under the technology of communication. And for me, after doing this assignment, that is the one form of assistive technology that I found most applicable. You're going to have students who have issues with written and oral and visual and audio learning processes. And so a smart board is very practical. It's very useful. They get to engage in their learning because they actually can use the smart board. They can go up to it, draw on it, move pictures, write on it, click for different visual aids that you may have there. And I think it's really great because you're getting to service an array of different learners. So for me, that was the most practical. But after looking through the Brinsma 2011 article, some of the assistive technologies that I want to talk about are the existence technology. So this is a technology that encompasses the functions that are necessary to sustain life, things that a child could not go without. And one of those technologies one of those forms of a technology that wasn't discussed in that article was the feeding tube. You know, you're going to have some students who may have a disability that requires them to have a feeding tube, and you're going to have to know that that feeding tube comes sometimes with a machine, and you need to be able to have an area in your classroom for that student, or you may need to rearrange your schedule for a time that that student may have to leave the classroom to use their feeding tube if that is necessary. Another one, like I said, communication. That was a definite one that hit with me. Communication is talking about the oral, the written, the audio, and the visual forms of communication, whether that's going to be for repetition, whether that's going to be for answering questions, or just social interaction. So anything that these students can use to interact with their peers. And one that wasn't talked about that I thought would be really great was tablets or Kindles. You could really use those in a reading setting. Students are going to get that visual aid if they need it. They're going to be able to have options to have books read to them if it's a Kindle. And there's going to be a message center or an application you can download on those tablets for students to interact socially with each other. So if you have a student that has a handicap and can't talk, but maybe uses sign language, but you have students that don't understand sign, they can use that tablet to communicate, whether that's a read and speak application that you use, but the actual form would be on that tablet. Another one was environmental interaction. So these are activities that are associated with daily living. And this was one that I thought was kind of interesting and you don't always think about, but it's not necessarily things that a child has to have in life will not progress if they don't have it. But it's something that they can use in their environment to help them be better at what they're doing. So one thing that I found that wasn't in the article was, it's very simple, but it's a seat cushion. If you have a child that has a sensory processing issue, sometimes something as simple as a seat cushion will help them stay focused, stay on task. When they're comfortable in that environment, that eliminates all the other aspects that could possibly get them off track. So, looking on, I actually found a website that was really cool for an additional assistive technology. This website was called www.understood.org, and I actually have a link to that in the discussion board because there's a certain page I used. The website itself is wonderful, and there's lots of different parts to it, but the link is to the specific page that talks about assistive technologies, and they listed 8 different ones, and so a new one that I found was actually transitioning. Um, I never really thought about that. You have students who have issues with transitioning. So maybe they aren't very good at time management, or it's really an upset for them to move from one subject to the next when they're maybe not ready. Something as simple as a timing device, a timer, a stopwatch, something that they can see that they're getting close to their time and that they need to start preparing themselves to move forward, could really work out well. So that's all I've got for this week's assignment, but I learned a lot and thought it was great.